welcome to another news update at the We Are podcast. So today is going to be interesting. We talked a lot about the Olympics, which started today.
Oh, they started today? I didn't even realize that. I
Yeah.
thought it was tomorrow.
Well, they technically already started. They started Friday night in Japan.
That's exciting.
I'm so excited.
Me too.
What are you looking forward to watching?
I'm looking forward to gymnastics personally.
Me too.
That's my favorite summer event. Personally, I enjoy it, and I also like swimming too. And I don't even remember what the
I
ones.
love gymnastics. I think gymnastics is kind of just like the thing that dominates the Olympics. Honestly.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will say that gymnastics is their favorite just because it's entertaining to watch.
Yeah, so speaking of the Olympics, Naomi Osaka opened the Olympics, she's a tennis player, really cool. There was a huge ceremony, it was really nice.
I saw a documentary called Naomi Osaka on Netflix.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
or maybe it's a TV show.
I'm pretty sure she is a doctor.
But that's really cool.
Yeah. So
what about tennis? Are you excited for tennis?
I'm so excited for tennis because gymnastics and tennis are probably the ones I'm going to be watching this year. And a reason I'm super excited about watching tennis is because, you know, Novak Djokovic, he's the world's #1 tennis player.
Her favorite tennis player.
He's my favorite. He's been my favorite. I feel like when I first started, I just said Federer was my favorite because I feel like that's what everyone would say. But ever since I actually started watching it, Djokovic has been my favorite for the longest time.
I've never seen him play before, but I know he's
He is
good.
a beast. But he's the world #1, and there's this thing called like the Golden Slam. And basically what it is if you win every single major tournament in the year, you have a Golden Slam. Because the major titles are called Grand Slams in tennis. And so he won Wimbledon, which is a major tennis tournament, you probably heard of it. He won the French Open, another biggest tennis tournament ever in France. Then there's the Australian Open, which he already won. So the only two more that he needs to win to have that Golden Slam is the Australian Open, and he needs to get the gold medal at this year's Olympics, which is why it's there's so much pressure on him. But
interesting.
I really hope he does well.
I mean, I don't really know him, but I don't know. I'm interested to see the results. So I'm sure you'll be happy if he does well.
Yeah, I mean,
you'll keep us updated.
There are some other top players, but you know what? It's okay.
We're hoping. Actually, I'm not because I don't even watch tennis, but
yeah. On a sadder note, actually, the cases in Tokyo are rising rapidly since Olympic season started, and there's much concern regarding the Olympics. Dozens of athletes have tested positive, including another tennis star, like sensation Coco Gauff.
Oh yeah, 17-year-old like novelty.
I think she went pro when she was like 14, 15, 16.
Whoa!
Very, very young. She made her like debut on like a major thing where she beat Venus Williams, which is like Serena Williams' sister, who's also insane.
Wow. Yeah, and she said it's always been a dream of hers to represent the USA at the Olympics, and she hopes there will be many more chances for her to make this come true in the future. It's really sad. I feel bad for her because it was a big opportunity for her, but you know, in the future, there's always the future.
Yeah, and I think she's been such like a watch. She's probably one of the most famous female tennis players of all time.
Right. Okay.
And she just made history, and it's really sad that she won't be competing for the
US,
because I think she would have made us proud.
I think she would have, And as we mentioned in the past news update, no spectators are allowed because their COVID-19 cases are like rising. So I mean, along with the no spectators, there are also many players testing positive, which just goes like to show that COVID-19 like isn't over yet. It's still happening, and it's a sad time for it to happen around the Olympics. It sucks. Yeah.
And even some of the biggest corporations canceled advertising. They're taking back their promotions. I mean, even some of the CEOs like Toyota, which is like a major sponsor of the Olympics, their CEOs would not be showing up because they think it's unfair since none of the spectators will be there. So they're kind of just a lot of people are backing out, and it's kind of sad, but
it is,
you know, we hope the USA wins. We're not biased at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
But you know what? Whoever wins, I think they deserve it.
I mean, the US is notorious for winning the most gold medals ever, but you know what? It's fine.
We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
All right. So on the note
Of
sketchy
coronavirus.
yes,
Sketchy cases.
sketchy corona cases. So there's actually been so much hesitancy regarding the vaccines.
There has.
There's been so much things, but now you know the Delta variant, right?
Yes,
A couple
yes.
weeks ago, we were talking about how the Delta variant had 10% of new cases.
Mm-hmm.
Now it has 83% of new cases.
That's
within
insane.
a matter of months. So it jumped like 70%.
I think that goes to show how transmissible it is. Like, if it can jump from that statistic to 83% of all cases that quickly, then it's like, and the saddest thing is, like, I was watching, I don't remember who it is, but someone was talking about it, and it's like, this is really preventable with the vaccine, like, these cases mounting.
And of course, I mean, it's not perfect, but if you are vaccinated, you have a 97% chance of being safe from being seriously ill.
Yeah.
And so, and also 99% of hospitalizations are from unvaccinated people. So I think we should take a little bit of time to talk about like some myths I would like to debunk because I saw this on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I think
All right.
So the first one is that the vaccine causes infertility or makes your period go away. No. It's physically impossible. I think, okay, let's explain this here. So, the vaccine, I tried to explain this last time, but the vaccine is made up of something called mRNA. And there's no actual, actual coronavirus being injected into you. It's just like instructions that are being sent to your immune system. So it won't alter your DNA. It can't change anything about how the way you're built, the way you think at all. All it does is tell your immune system how to react if the actual thing goes inside and how to take it out.
So it basically gives your immune system instructions in the case that you do contract the virus, so it's less deadly for you.
Yeah, basically. For example, let's say your teacher tells you to write an essay, they don't give you the topic, they don't give you what to write about, so you start writing about unicorns and you fail. Whereas if your teacher told you, okay, we have to write about water bottles, you write about water bottles and you get an A. So it's just instructions, right?
It's instructions to your body. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah. And there's been another one that people are injecting chips into.
Oh, chips to track you. Okay, number one, why would they do that? Like, I don't see a point in that personally. And number two, even if, let's say it did happen, which it didn't. Let's say it did. I mean, what can they do with your information?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like you're a secret spy, like working for the government of.
Yeah, and also in our government, we have a very democratic, open government. There's almost no cases of fraud in such a high office, so it would be almost physically impossible for them to lie to our country.
Yeah. And it's really just not plausible. I think one of the main reasons a lot of people are really hesitant is because coronavirus came so unexpectedly, and it's like the vaccine is something that we've been trying out new things, and we've come up with it like kind of randomly in a way, because it's like, I think that's why people are so hesitant, because it happened because it was so unexpected.
Yeah, and that's another misconception that, oh, it's so random, they don't even know if it works, like there's no difference.
They have done tests. They have to test
there
it before.
Is proof, because if the Delta variant came before we got the vaccine, what we're seeing now would be like 20 million times worse.
Yeah, it would. As I talked about in the past episode, like Los Angeles County, after they let down the restrictions, like the cases mounted by like 10 times. So
it's affecting young people more than ever before, and the misconception that young people are safe is so wrong.
Because I think that's what everyone told us at the beginning, that like if you're young, then you're okay. But especially with the new variant, not necessarily. And even with other variants, you can still like lose your sense of smell, taste, and touch. And who wants to be sick too? Like, I mean, it's just not a fun experience. So yeah.
And also, it can result in brain damage, which
it can. That scared the crap out of me. That scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, there are a lot of risks, and yeah, you might be fine, but you might not be fine.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the lottery in a way. So you just have to be careful.
Yeah, there might be another surge, and there was actually this lady whose son, he refused to get vaccinated because he's like, I don't know what they're putting in me. I'm not gonna trust them. And she told him to get it, but he wouldn't let her get it, and he wouldn't get it.
He wouldn't let her get it?
He wouldn't let her get it. He's like, Ma, I don't know what they're putting in. It's her son. And he died, and at his funeral, she turned it into a vaccine drive because she's like, this is.
I mean, that's really sad because I think the main reason the person was like really didn't want to get the vaccine was because it's just so new.
Yes.
But there's been research done, there's been studies done. They can't release something that's like dangerous to the public.
They can. And so, on the same topic about COVID-19 again, because it's coming back, sister.
Oh yeah,
there's
as never before.
another headline. Would you like to read it?
Yes, new variant is found in the U.S. It's called the Lambda variant, and it's discovered in Texas.
Which is another reason you should get vaccinated, because the more people that are unvaccinated, the more chances the COVID-19 has to mutate, which means deadlier strains.
Exactly. And I actually read an article where a woman got like 2 separate strains of the virus at the same time.
Yeah, I think
she ended up
the
dying.
Lambda and the Delta, or like
I think it was Delta and something else.
Alpha.
Alpha, I think.
Yeah, Delta.
But she got 2 strains at the same time and she ended up dying. So stuff like that can happen, especially for unvaccinated individuals.
Yeah.
So I definitely encourage do research if you're still hesitant. Again, like talk to family and friends and medical professionals. There are a lot of areas like even like Walgreens hands out vaccines, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, so our next headline is that Rand Paul accuses Dr. Fauci of lying about the origin of COVID-19.
Yes. Okay, so Rand Paul and Fauci is the head of the CDC, by the way.
Yeah.
I think we've said that. They got into a very heated exchange on Tuesday in a Senate hearing. So basically, Paul accused Fauci of lying to Congress about the origins of the COVID-19 virus.
So could you tell us a little bit about like what the theories are regarding like where it started?
So some people think it started in a lab in Wuhan, and there's this thing called gain of function studies or gain of function research, which is basically where you can manipulate a disease in a way where you like learn stuff about it and how it spreads, but that increases the transmissibility, host strain, and pathogenesis of it, so it makes it more potent. It's a way to study a virus while making it more potent. So the Senator Rand Paul accused the NIH, which is the National Institute of Health, for funding research on bat coronaviruses, basically funding gain of function research for bat coronaviruses. And he said, quote, Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement from May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain of function research in Wuhan? So he basically accused Fauci of lying.
Okay, so he's lying about funding that research.
He was lying about basically the origins of it and gain of function research.
Yeah.
And Fauci really like cracked down on this. He basically told Rand Paul, you don't know what you're talking about. Like he said, quote, you do not know what you're talking about. So he said, you are implying that what he did is responsible for the deaths of individuals. I totally resent that. And if anybody is lying here, Senator, it is you. So that got heated. They both kind of just accused each other of lying.
Come back.
Oh yeah. So yeah, the disagreement stems.
You don't mess with Italian people.
Oh no, you don't. You don't mess with the head of the CDC.
Who's also Italian. So
yeah. So it stemmed from whether or not the NIH funded research on bat coronaviruses. So basically, Rand Paul really thought the NIH kind of caused the coronavirus and caused it to be more potent. And obviously Fauci disagreed with this and they accused each other of lying and it was this huge heated debate basically.
Anyway.
Yeah, alright.
So we're on to natural disasters, which are just as bad as corona.
I know. It really sucks.
It does.
I mean, they both cause deaths. You know, anything that causes death
and destruction is always bad.
It is. So these fires are taking place in Siberia. So you know the crazy thing about this is the city where some of these fires are taking place in is in Siberia. It's called Yakutsk. It's the coldest city in the world. And their experience.
Really?
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Look up world's coldest city, and Yakutsk is the world's coldest city. And
so Yakutsk is in Siberia, and that's the place that is lighting on fire, even though it's the coldest
yes,
place.
and there are like abnormally hot temperatures. Like it's in an area where residents are used to being like in Arctic temperatures and cold temperatures. It's just so like insane that it's like heating up, and many people suspect climate change is the leading cause for this, which makes sense.
It does, because I mean we've seen how temperatures are increasing over the years. So.
Yeah, residents and firefighters are digging trenches to keep fire away from their homes and fields, but the smog has already covered over 50 settlements, and it's really particularly dangerous to elderly people and people who have contracted COVID-19.
Yeah, because your lungs are so weak, right?
Right,
With
exactly.
you're inhaling all the smoke, it can really screw you over.
It really can, it really can.
Yeah.
And this is just, the Russian defense minister said, quote, "The fire hazard situation has sharply worsened almost all over the country due to the abnormal heat." And there are other areas experiencing wildfires like, Yakutia. The wildfires in Yakutia, which is also in Siberia, have consumed more than 6.5 million acres since the beginning of the year, which is nearly 5 million football fields.
That is insane.
I know, I can't even imagine that. And there's a bootleg wildfire in Oregon, which has grown into
I
like,
heard about that.
Yeah,
That is
yeah.
insane. And like there's wildfires like along the west coast, like California, Oregon.
yeah.
And the smoke is traveling all the way over.
All the way to New York City.
Yeah.
All the way across the continent.
It's insane.
And I think one of the craziest things about this is that people have been saying a lot of these wildfires that are taking place in Siberia, in the United States, they're taking place in places that they haven't taken place before, and they're worsening too.
Yeah.
So it's really, really concerning. So yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely climate change. Global warming is probably the main cause.
Yeah,
behind
because
this.
as heats rise, it's easier to maintain the fire, and it's harder to extinguish it. So
Yeah.
it makes sense that like the global temperatures rise and cause more.
Yeah, and heat waves and droughts are also increasing, which
Yes,
is also causing
Yeah.
wildfires.
So
yeah,
you
it's-
know, recycle.
Yeah,
Recycle.
I think what you can do, we'll make an episode, a separate one about this, but
Yes.
like, just really be conscientious of like how much you're using, like the waste. Like if you see trash, pick it up. You know, stuff like don't take like 40-minute showers. You know,
Yeah.
and I think it's a combined effort from people, like everyone on this earth, to really stop this, and you are part of that combined effort. So we'll make a new episode about that. So.
Yeah, and I think it's important to talk about these things, and
It is.
it's weird that fires are being caused by global warming. It makes
I
sense,
know.
but
It
what's
makes a
even
lot of sense.
weirder is that floods are being caused by global
Yes.
warming.
So this happened in China, central China. At least 33 people have died and 8 people are still missing in central China due to flooding. So devastating floods took place that submerged entire neighborhoods, trapped passengers in subway cars, caused landslides, and overwhelmed dams and rivers.
It's insane, and
It is.
this is also being caused by global warming. I heard like there's a potential that it could be caused by global
Yeah, because
warming.
there's such large amounts of rainfall that have taken place in the Henan province,
Yes.
which is home to 99 million residents, and it's one of China's most populated and poorest provinces.
Yeah.
So
Because I mean, if it like evaporates faster, I assume there's gonna be more
yeah.
rainfall.
Zhengzhou is one of the worst hit areas. 12 people were killed after being trapped 4 hours on a flooded subway line.
Oh,
Like
that's
imagine,
awful.
I actually watched some of the videos, and like they're like in this subway thing, and the water's like up to here, and it's
That's a nightmare. Just
it is.
drowning in a
And there
subway.
some survivors talked about their traumatic experience. Like 500 people were rescued, 5 were injured, and 12 died. So that's really really concerning. And
You could have trauma for that for years.
you could. Especially if you're claustrophobic, because
Yes.
being trapped in that small enclosed space and
With
having it,
water gradually filling up, that's a nightmare.
not knowing what's going to happen to you, and like having people around you losing their lives too, and having to witness that is really traumatic. So like the cars are like practically floating in the water, and pedestrians are walking like waist deep in it. It's insane.
That is
Like, yeah, I mean, there are obviously rescue efforts, emergency military personnel, but I mean, it's still really, really sad.
yeah. So we hope it gets better because
Mhm.
you know the natural disasters we're facing this year are so much larger than years in the past, and it's all due to like carbon emissions, which just leads to climate change. You know, when we're polluting the environment, you know, everything gets harder because something about the carbon just makes the temperatures rise, and it's the more carbon emissions, the more climate change.
Yeah, the more in the more populated areas, like this area I was just talking about, the Henan province, like the more populated it is, the more people releasing carbon emissions, so the more climate change, the more natural disasters. It's like a vicious cycle, basically. So
yeah, that's our first half.
Yeah. Alrighty, I think that's all we had for the first half. See you in the second half. Bye.
Welcome back from the break.
Welcome back.
So in the second half, we're going to be talking more about a little bit more social type things.
Yeah, like some hate crimes, opioids, Hank Johnson, you know?
Yeah, anyway.
So
our first headline today is a man in Ohio was charged with a hate crime after he was plotting to commit a mass shooting of a woman.
Whoa, what happened there? Can you explain that?
Yeah, so basically there was a dude, his name is Tress Genko, he's 21, and he identifies himself as an incel. And you may be asking yourself, what is it?
What is an incel? I was asking myself that.
Well, an incel is basically like super misogynistic people that think women are less and that they aren't worthy of men and women are just terrible and they harbor towards women to commit violence in support of their belief that women are
terrible.
Unjust and anyway.
So he's charged with one count of attempting to commit a hate crime, which is punishable by up to life in prison.
Yeah, and he's also charged with a count of possessing a machine gun, which is up to 10 years.
Wow.
The DOJ said, like the Department of Justice said. Basically, the whole reason that they're charging it is not because he carried out this actual mass shooting. It's because they found several pieces of evidence that kind of like indicate that he was going to do this, including
So he didn't follow through with it.
He didn't follow through.
Okay.
But he Googled some very, very, very questionable things, including when does plotting for like a murder become an attempt to murder?
Or my goodness.
How to carry a shootout or something.
Yeah, I think that really indicates that he's like a danger to society at this point, you know?
And also he wrote a letter or like a note about how he would slaughter women out of hate, jealousy, and revenge.
Oh my god. I think this dude has some serious mental issues because...
He does. Okay, so first of all, he's a racist, misogynistic psychopath and sociopath and delusional git.
Really, yes.
But he's not a good person. And the formal charge, his hearing hasn't been done yet, but they found like a bunch of illegal weapons in 2020. He also completed military training before his said attack on the woman.
That's really sketchy. He said there's a note saying he wanted to kill up to 3,000 people?
Yeah.
What the heck?
Not even people, just women in general.
Yeah, women, yeah. And that's just, it's really disgusting and like disturbing to think about that these crimes are number one targeted towards women and number two like being plotted. And I'm really glad he was caught because that could have resulted in a lot of destruction.
Yeah, so
it could have been very bad.
His hearing is scheduled for this Friday in the Southern District of Ohio. So that's good. I mean,
I'm glad he's kind of like getting punishment because I really think he should. Definitely. I don't think you need him to actually follow through with it to know that he was planning on it and to know that it could happen because it definitely could have happened.
Because I feel like another thing with this thing is that the people like that should never be let alone, even if they haven't like done anything,
right?
Because they are a threat to society.
It's like a mentally disturbed like person who could end up hurting people, and you really have to be careful about that. You really have to take the necessary precautions to make sure that person doesn't end up hurting people or killing people.
Yeah,
because that was their intention.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So our next headline has something to do with sort of like a crime type thing.
Uh-huh.
So what part of it is the Justice Department creates gun trafficking strike forces in 5 cities to crack down on sources of firearm-related crimes. So basically, this is to counter we've talked about this before, but there's a huge increase in gun violence and gang violence in general in cities like Chicago, which we talked about.
Oh, we did talk about that. Yeah.
Los Angeles, New York, San Francisco Bay Area, Washington D.C. And these are all places where guns are being illegally trafficked.
Okay, so it's like a legal trade of guns, sort of. It's like drug dealing, but with guns.
Yeah,
basically gun dealing.
And they're getting guns. Most shooters actually get guns illegally, so it's gonna help with deadly shootings and other crimes. And they are getting these like strike forces, which can be comprised of like law enforcement stuff. And they'll be focused on disrupting illegal firearm trading and trafficking networks. Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco told CNN's Brianna Keeler. And she obviously wanted to she said, the Monaco, she said that she did want to obviously stop the people, but in order to stop the people, you have to stop their source of getting things.
Yeah, it's like you have to identify the main reason behind it. It's like, yes, the people are the ones getting the guns, but it's the fact that they have access to them in the first place.
Yeah, and I think it's important to stop illegal gun trade.
It is.
Because it's causing a lot of school shootings.
Yeah, it can lead to a lot of death, really, because guns are very violent weapons.
Especially if it's illegal, you know.
Yeah, especially if it's illegal. They're very violent weapons. They're weapons that are meant to use for people to use to defend themselves, so they can actually kill a human being.
Yeah, if someone uses it wrongly, then it's
if someone who shouldn't have access to it has access to it, that can be really damaging and dangerous to.
Yeah, and for example, like the man we just talked about who was in Ohio, he had illegal firearms and he could have done a lot of damage with that. So.
Yeah, he really could have. So I think it's a good thing to be focusing on this, like, and trying to really like pin down the cause and trying to stop that from happening. Yeah.
All right. And just to end off this segment, I think we should talk a little bit about how like non-fatal shootings and fatal shootings are a major point of concern in like big cities. And it was a huge increase. You can check out CNN. They have a like entire statistics on it. But one of the statistics from CNN was the most notable increase is in San Francisco, where as of June 30th, there have been 119 victims of gun violence, more than 58 victims. Oh wait, more than double the 58 victims from last year.
I've definitely read that there's a rise in gun violence, and I think you hear that a lot in the news, like all these school shootings, and I think there's definitely a rise, definitely.
Yeah, and all by double, that's insane.
That is insane. It's like undeniable that it's rising, and it really is affecting a lot of people. And I think like kids' mental health, if they have witnessed a school shooting, it can be really, really damaging. And I can imagine, like, I've never been through that, but I bet it's incredibly hard for their families, for them, for the people who have lost their lives. So
yeah. All right. So, would you like to introduce our next?
Yes, so the U.S. launches airstrikes against the Taliban to support Afghan forces. So I'm going to give a little bit of background again, just super briefly, because I've actually given background in a previous episode about this. But so we've been in a war with Afghanistan since 9/11 because the founder of Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, and the person behind the 9/11 attack, the Taliban basically like refused to give him to the U.S.
And the Taliban are terrorists, right?
They're a terrorist group, but they have like the control over Afghanistan at the moment. So basically, George W. Bush was president at the time, and he signed something so U.S. troops could invade Afghanistan. And we are now withdrawing troops by August 31st. It was originally going to be by September 11th, but actually Biden changed that date to August 31st. So the U.S. launched overnight airstrikes against the Taliban in Afghanistan. So this is a reflection of one of the goals of the U.S., which is to continue supporting Afghan forces with combat aircraft until U.S. forces withdraw. So until the U.S. forces that invaded Afghanistan withdraw, the U.S. is going to help the ANSDF, which is Afghan National Defense and Security Forces. So they released airstrikes. There have been more than 4 U.S. airstrikes on Wednesday and Thursday, and at least 2 targeted military equipment that the Taliban stole from Afghan forces. So basically, the U.S. is this is a way of like pledging their support to like Afghan forces against the Taliban. Okay. So and this is kind of related to it, but it's also different. So Afghan interpreters are the people that work for the U.S. military in Afghanistan, and they help they're basically translators. So one Afghan interpreter, Sohail Pardi, was actually shot, which is
I heard
or not shot. He was actually beheaded by the Taliban.
Yeah.
By the Taliban, which is, in a lot of Afghan interpreters are really scared. And one of the main reasons why the Taliban is like targeting these people is because the U.S. has decided to also give Afghan interpreters U.S. visas so they can move to the U.S. So the Taliban sees that as like opposing the Taliban, basically. So a lot of interpreters in Afghanistan who are planning to move to the U.S. are really terrified because they might be targeted. So
the Taliban are so bad because they really they have a
violent streak.
They're not only violent, but their views are so wrong. I don't know if you heard about Malala Yousafzai.
Yes.
But they basically didn't want girls to be educated because they thought women were less and they're not useful.
Right.
And they're not good. So this girl named Malala Yousafzai, she was fighting for the girls' and children's right to education. And they shot her because of her views. And so I mean, a lot of people they kind of stay in the bubble of, we live in the U.S. and this is okay, but in other countries, people are being shot for simply wanting to go to school.
Yeah, and she was a very brave woman. She survived it, which is incredible.
Yes, she is a Nobel Prize winner.
Yeah, and she's such an inspiration to young girls today and just everyone around the world.
And children, too,
and
in gender.
Yeah, and it doesn't even matter your gender, actually. Well, anyone she can be an inspiration to because she has such bravery and courage. So, there's a lot going on in Afghanistan at the moment.
We can make an episode about the Taliban.
Yeah, we could. And just Afghanistan in general and the war and, the specifics of it. Because there's a lot happening with that. So, let us know if you want to hear that.
Okay, let's talk about Hanky now. Hanky.
Oh, wait, we were supposed to, weren't we? Oh, right, yeah.
We're talking about Hanky. Anyway.
Okay, I just messed up the order of things. I completely. All right.
Representative Hank Johnson was arrested at a voting rights protest.
Yes. So he was arrested by Capitol Police on Thursday. So he is one of 10 people who the Capitol Police arrested for, quote, unlawfully demonstrating outside the Hart Senate office building, charged with crowding, obstructing, and incommoding. So he was a suburban Atlanta congressman, and he was part of a group of people that blocked a door of a Senate office building in Washington. They were protesting lack of action on voting law proposals, and they also protested restrictive state election bills. In the past episode, I talked about how there was a voting bill in Texas that was very restrictive for voting for groups of people to vote, and then they also demanded an end to filibusters, which is basically having 60 people agree to something to be able to pass a bill, which is really hard because 10 of 10 Republicans would have to agree to something that Democrats wanted to pass.
Yeah, and so now Republicans don't want the filibuster to be eliminated because that means that the Democrats would have control. But let's say in the future Republicans have control, then they would want the filibuster, or they wouldn't want the filibuster.
I think the filibuster is great if you're the one, or not great. The filibuster sucks if you're the one with the power.
Yes, because because right now Democrats have majority, right?
Right.
So that means that they want the filibuster to be gone because they just want the majority vote. But let's say they have a minority next election. I mean, they don't want the they want the filibuster because then that means the Republicans can't pass it with just a majority, pass any legislation, any bills, anything that they want. So.
Yeah.
It really depends on which side is winning that year.
It's really who has the power. I think it just depends on that.
It really depends.
So there was a big protest. They chanted "Black voters, they matter here" and "Hey, hey, ho, ho, the filibuster has got to go." That's really catchy, actually. But they were arrested because the police, I think, ordered the crowd blocking the entrance to disperse, and Hank Johnson, along with some other people, didn't disperse. So
Okay.
yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah.
All right.
So I mean, all right.
Yeah.
Next topic is
So our next topic, we're gonna be talking about some
opioids,
money.
and yeah.
Yes.
So
There are some money deals that are happening.
states proposed $26 billion opioid settlement with big three distributors and Johnson & Johnson.
Yes.
So, in case you didn't know, an opioid is basically, it's a painkiller,
But it's highly, highly addictive.
very addictive. So medical professionals can, what's the word? When you like allow
Prescribe?
can prescribe patients this, but it can be highly, highly addictive. And we've been going through like an opioid epidemic in our country,
Yeah.
where like so many people have died because of overdose. So a group of state attorneys general announced a proposed $26 billion settlement that, if approved, will resolve claims against the three big distributors, McKesson, Cardinal Health, and AmerisourceBergen, along with Johnson & Johnson.
So those are three companies that distribute opioids.
Yeah, McKesson, Cardinal Health, and AmerisourceBergen are like known as the three big like distributors, and then Johnson & Johnson is also involved in this. So they basically, people are saying they like funneled opioids to communities, which caused overdose deaths.
Okay.
There are a lot of lawsuits against them. So if this deal is approved, it's a way of like basically giving these communities money for like recovery and treatment and prevention. It'll actually resolve the claims of almost 4,000 entities, which is that's a lot of lawsuits.
So
That's a lot of
4,000
lawsuits.
entities mean 4,000 families or groups that have.
That have basically filed a lawsuit against these
So
companies.
that they're trying
Yeah.
to. Okay.
So the big three distributors, McKesson, Cardinal Health, and AmerisourceBergen, will combine to pay $21 billion, while Johnson & Johnson will pay $5 billion. So this would mean that Johnson & Johnson would stop selling opioids, stop funding or providing grants that promote opioid use, and stop lobbying for any activities related to opioids. And then McKesson, Cardinal Health, and AmerisourceBergen would be required to share data with an independent clearinghouse and account for their own shipments. So basically, it's a way to prevent like opioid funneling to like communities, and a way to prevent overdose deaths, basically.
That makes sense.
Yeah, the drugs have resulted in overdose deaths of 500,000 people from 2009 to 2019. That's a lot of people.
That's a lot, especially from something that is preventable. Like,
Yeah.
corona is not really preventable unless you get vaccinated.
Right.
Unless the whole population gets vaccinated.
And
But this is something that you can stop. And if these companies were more responsible, then
And I think it leaves the patient in a vulnerable situation, because they're prescribed something by a medical professional, but it's so addictive that it's like, you know.
and these companies don't make it any easier. I mean,
Exactly.
they want money, so it makes sense that they can.
Yeah, and the agreement still needs the approval of more than 40 states and hundreds of cities and counties. And actually, which is surprising, it was actually a result of a bipartisan agreement by the state attorneys general. So bipartisan is like both parties agreeing.
So Republicans and
Yeah.
Democrats both
Which is
agree.
rare. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. So basically, that's what's happening in the opioid epidemic.
Yeah, we can make an episode about the opioid crisis.
We can,
too.
and like drugs in general too.
Yeah, I think opioids is something important to talk about.
it
'cause
is.
they're
It is.
so
There's so many
addictive.
deaths, and yeah,
Opioids are another level of addictive.
they are. They
Okay.
really are.
So our last news update for this week is about the kind of like the infrastructure bill, which we've talked about for the past like 3 weeks,
We have.
I think. And it's basically the infrastructure deal is basically just like railroads and all sorts of different traditional humanities.
Yeah,
and stuff.
it's like infrastructure, which is like roads, railways, buildings.
Yeah. All right. So they already agreed on the first part of it, which is like traditional infrastructure, which is like highways and stuff. But the second part of it, which is more like healthcare, Republicans and Democrats have not concisely agreed about that. Sorry about that. But Republicans and Democrats have not concisely agreed on the second part of it. So actually Democratic Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, which means that he's like the leader of the Democratic Party, which
in
is
the
majority.
Senate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So he holds that, and he wanted to schedule the procedural vote, like the vote, like for the infrastructure bill, the
Right.
$1.2 trillion bill. Just to get the ball rolling. And I think something important here is that not many people expected this to pass. I don't think any Democrats even expected it to pass. They just kind of wanted it to get the talks going and get the ball moving.
So it was kind of just like a starter in a way. Like,
yeah, it was kind of just like a starter.
And also, this was bipartisan, wasn't it, too? Or was it?
Well, okay, so basically the first part was bipartisan. The first part is agreed on, it was worked on by both parties, and that bill is already like set, basically.
Oh, I see.
But this part, there's still a little bit of iffiness on both sides, and they're working on it, and there's actually news happening that there was a group of 22 senators, Republicans and Democrats, that have met together, and they gave a statement out after the vote failed that they're making significant progresses and they're close to a final agreement, which they hope will be passed by at least the end of August, which is when like the Congress recesses, which is basically when they have like a vacation break for all the senators.
Oh, right, yeah. It's vacay.
Yeah. So it's a critical legislation, and they're not votes which is why the Republicans enacted the filibuster, which means that the Democrats couldn't pass without the majority.
Right, exactly. So it makes it really hard for them to pass things.
It makes it hard, and and so it got rejected, but they're hoping that this $1 trillion deal will eventually be passed, and with a little bit of negotiation. So the vote was actually 51-49 against the Democrats. So the Republicans have 51.
Oh, they do.
Yeah. So they had 51, and which they needed 60 votes to get past the Republicans block. So they were 9 short.
9 short. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Okay. And so the Democratic leader, which was Chuck Schumer, who we were talking about, he actually switched his vote to no at the end.
So he doesn't want to pass this infrastructure.
So he said yes originally, in the rare occasion that it would somehow get passed.
Interesting.
But he switched it back to no, saying that this step would like allow him to reconsider some parts of the bill.
Okay, so I think he was kind of going into it like not expecting it to be passed, so that's why he said yes, and then he reconsidered. It's kind of like it's not really that he like changed his mind. It's more like a political move so that he could reevaluate the deal. So. Reevaluate it and really nitpick it and like look at the different elements.
All right. That's our news update.
All right. That is all for this week.
Got any good news, Celine?
Well, the Olympics do start tomorrow, which is today.
Today. So
that's news.
Yeah. For me,
we got our schedules today for high school.
Oh, we did.
We have no classes.
That's our good news for this week.
It's not good news because we have no classes.
Yeah,
together.
that's our bad news for the week.
All right. Well, follow us on our socials.
All of the sources we use to do this podcast will be linked in the bio. All of our social medias will be linked in the bio. If you want to hear any episodes, DM us or email us and let us know.
We'd be happy to hear from you. All right. Bye.